How would you react if your husband handed you legal papers the morning after you demanded to sleep at another man's house? What happens when the person you blame for overreacting fights back with a lawyer? This is the story of the night my ultimatum backfired and my life changed in a single phone call. The evening started like any other Tuesday in our suburban townhouse. I was folding Linnea's school clothes while Halden worked on his laptop in the living room. The familiar click of his keyboard mixing with the hum of our dishwasher. 7 years of marriage had settled into this comfortable routine, but tonight felt different. Tonight, I had something important to discuss. "Halden, we need to talk," I said, setting down my daughter's pink sweater and walking into the living room. My heart was racing, but I tried to keep my voice casual. He looked up from his screen, his brown eyes curious. "What's up, Eirene? Everything okay?" I perched on the edge of our beige sectional, smoothing my work blouse. "Rowan's having a party this Saturday. You remember Rowan, right? My friend from the gym?" "The personal trainer guy." Halden's fingers paused over his keyboard. "Yeah, I remember him. Well, he's having this amazing house party, and it's going to go pretty late, like, really late, and I was thinking—" I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. "I was thinking it would be easier if I just stayed over, instead of driving home drunk, or paying for an expensive Uber." The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Halden closed his laptop slowly, his expression unreadable. "Stay over," he repeated, "at Rowan's place." "It's completely innocent, Halden. There will be other people there. It's not like we'd be alone or anything." I could hear the defensive edge creeping into my voice, but I pressed on. "I just think it's the responsible thing to do. Safety first, right?" Halden leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his dark hair. "Eirene, I'm not comfortable with that." "Not comfortable with what? Me being safe? Me having friends?" "That's not what I said." His voice was measured, controlled. "I'm not comfortable with my wife sleeping at another man's house. I think that's a reasonable boundary." I felt heat rising in my chest. A boundary? Or a cage? Halden, we're adults. We're married, not joined at the hip. I should be able to have friendships without you getting all possessive and jealous. This isn't about jealousy, Eirene. This is about respect. How do you think it looks? How do you think it makes me feel? How it looks? I stood up, pacing to the window. Since when do we make decisions based on what other people think? And your feelings? Halden, your feelings about this are based on insecurity, not reality. Rowan and I are friends, just friends. Friends don't usually have sleepovers, Eirene. God, you make it sound so juvenile. It's called being progressive, Halden. It's called trusting your spouse. I turned to face him, crossing my arms. Other couples do this all the time. Sarah from work, her husband doesn't bat an eye when she stays out with male friends. I'm not Sarah's husband. I'm your husband. And as my husband, you should trust me. I could feel tears of frustration building. I can't believe you're being so controlling about this. I'm 34 years old, Halden. I don't need your permission to have a social life. But even as I said it, I realized that's exactly what I was asking for. Permission. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I was too committed to the argument to back down now. Halden stood up, walking to the kitchen. I followed him, watching as he filled a glass with water from the tap. His movements were deliberate, careful. "I need time to think about this," he said finally. "Think about what? Whether you trust your wife or not?" I laughed bitterly. "That should be pretty straightforward, don't you think?" He turned to look at me, and something in his expression made me pause. There was hurt there, yes, but also something else. Something that looked almost like disappointment. "I've never given you a reason not to trust me," I continued, softer now. "Have I?" "No," he said quietly. "You haven't." "Then what's the problem?" "The problem, Eirene, is that you're asking me to be okay with something that feels fundamentally wrong to me. And when I try to express that, you attack my character instead of addressing my concerns." I opened my mouth to argue, but he held up a hand. "I'm going to bed." We can talk about this tomorrow. As he headed toward the stairs, I pulled out my phone and quickly typed a message to Rowan. Talk to H. Still working on him, but I think it's happening. I thought I was being discreet, but as I hit send, I noticed Halden had paused at the bottom of the stairs. Our eyes met for a moment, and I wondered if he'd seen me texting. But he just shook his head and continued upstairs. I called my sister Sel as soon as I heard the bedroom door close. He's being completely unreasonable, I whispered into the phone, pacing around the kitchen. I mean, what century is this? I should be able to stay at a friend's house without my husband having a meltdown. Absolutely, Sel agreed. You need to live your truth, Eirene. If Halden can't handle you having male friends, that's his problem, not yours. Exactly. Thank you for being the voice of reason here. Have you talked to Mum about this? Not yet, but I'm sure she'd agree. She raised us to be independent women, not doormats. After I hung up, I felt vindicated. Sel was right. This was about independence, about not letting insecurity and jealousy control my life. I went to bed that night convinced that Halden would come around, that he'd see reason and apologize for being so possessive. I had no idea that upstairs, my husband was lying awake, staring at the ceiling, and quietly making plans of his own. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel possible. I'd chosen the trendy new restaurant downtown for our family brunch, partly because I knew Rowan frequented the place, and partly because I wanted to show Halden that our marriage was strong enough to weather a little disagreement. This place is cute, my mother Moira said, as we settled into our booth. She was wearing her best pearl earrings, the ones she saved for special occasions. They're a bit expensive for brunch, don't you think? It's fine, Mom, I said, smoothing Linnea's hair as she coloured on the kids' menu. We can afford to splurge once in a while. Halden had been quiet during the drive, responding to Linnea's chatter, but barely acknowledging me. I'd decided to take the high road and not push the issue. He'd come around eventually. Sel arrived 10 minutes later, sliding into the booth next to Mom, with her usual dramatic flair. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was insane. No problem, I said. We just ordered drinks. The conversation flowed easily enough at first. Mum updated us on her book club drama. Sel complained about her latest dating disaster, and Linnea showed everyone her latest drawing of our family. But I could feel the tension radiating from Halden, like heat from a furnace. So, Sel said, cutting into her eggs Benedict, Eirene told me about your little disagreement, Halden. I nearly choked on my mimosa. Sel, what? It's not a secret, is it? She looked between us with raised eyebrows. I just think it's great that Eirene is maintaining her independence. Too many women lose themselves in marriage. Halden's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. I don't think this is the appropriate venue for that discussion. Oh, come on, I said, feeling emboldened by Sel's support. It's just family. And honestly, I think it's important that Linnea sees that marriage is about partnership, not ownership. What are you talking about? Mom asked, looking confused. Halden doesn't want me to sleep over at my friend Rowan's house after his party tonight, I explained. He thinks it's inappropriate. Mum's eyebrows shot up. Sleep over? At a man's house? See, Halden said quietly, I'm not the only one who finds it concerning. Mom, you're being old-fashioned too, I said. Rowan and I are just friends, nothing more. Honey, Mom said carefully, I understand wanting to be independent, but maybe Halden has a point. Does Daddy not like your friend? Linnea piped up, looking between us with worried eyes. Everything's fine, sweetheart, I said quickly. Adults just disagree sometimes. That's when Rowan walked in. I spotted him immediately. It was hard to miss his tall, athletic frame, and that confident swagger he carried everywhere. He was with a group of friends, laughing at something on his phone. When he saw me, his face lit up. Eirene. Hey there, beautiful. He approached our table with that easy smile that had first caught my attention at the gym 6 months ago. I felt my cheeks flush as he leaned down to give me a hug that lasted just a beat too long. Everyone, this is Rowan, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. Rowan, this is my family. My mom, Moira, my sister, Sel, my daughter, Linnea, and my husband, Halden. Rowan shook hands around the table, but I noticed his grip lingered when he got to me. So nice to finally meet everyone. Eirene talks about you all the time. All good things, I hope, Mum said with a polite smile. Always, Rowan said, his eyes finding mine. She's pretty amazing. I felt a thrill at the compliment, even as I noticed Halden's knuckles whiten around his coffee cup. Are you still planning on coming tonight? Rowan asked me directly. The party's going to be epic. I'm still working on the logistics, I said, shooting a meaningful look at Halden. Well, you know you're always welcome to crash at my place if you need to, Rowan said with a wink. I've got plenty of room. The silence at our table was deafening. Even Linnea had stopped colouring. That's very generous of you, Halden said, his voice deadly calm. But my wife will be coming home tonight. Rowan's smile faltered slightly. Oh, okay, sure. Well, the offer stands if you change your mind. After he left, the tension at our table was thick enough to cut with a knife. He seems nice, Sel said, clearly trying to lighten the mood. Very friendly, Mom added, but her tone suggested she wasn't entirely comfortable with what she'd witnessed. See what I mean? I said to Halden. He's just being nice. There's nothing inappropriate about it. Nothing inappropriate. Halden's voice was barely above a whisper. He called you beautiful. In front of your husband and daughter. He winked at you and offered his bed. His couch, I corrected, and you're reading way too much into... Halden's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I watched his face go completely white. What is it? I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he stood up abruptly. I need some air. Halden, wait. But he was already walking toward the exit, his phone clutched in his hand. What was that about? Sel asked. I had no idea, but a cold dread was settling in my stomach. Through the restaurant window, I could see Halden pacing in the parking lot, his phone pressed to his ear. Maybe we should go, Mum suggested. Linnea, honey, are you finished eating? As we gathered our things, I noticed several other diners watching us with curious expressions. One woman at the bar was whispering to her companion while looking directly at me. By the time we made it outside, Halden was off the phone. His expression was unreadable. Everything okay? I asked. We need to go home, he said. Now. The drive home was silent except for Linnea's questions about why Daddy seemed upset. I deflected as best I could, but my mind was racing. What had been in that message? And why did I have the sinking feeling that, whatever it was about to change everything? Monday morning at the office felt different. I'd always prided myself on being well-liked at Henderson & Associates, where I worked as an office administrator. I knew everyone's coffee orders, remembered birthdays, and kept the gossip mill running with just the right amount of harmless chatter. But today, conversation stopped when I walked by. Colleagues who usually greeted me with warm smiles now offered polite nods before quickly looking away. Morning, Janet, I said to our receptionist as I passed her desk. Oh, morning, Eirene, she replied, not quite meeting my eyes. I settled at my desk and tried to focus on the stack of invoices waiting for me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The weekend had been tense after our disastrous brunch. Halden had barely spoken to me, spending most of Sunday holed up in his home office with the door closed. Around 10:30, my friend Michelle from accounting approached my desk. We usually grabbed coffee together on Monday mornings, but she looked uncomfortable. Hey, she said, glancing around nervously. Can we talk, privately? We walked to the break room, which was mercifully empty. Michelle closed the door behind us. Eirene, I need to ask you something, and I want you to know I'm asking as a friend. My stomach dropped. Okay. Is everything all right at home, with you and Halden? Why would you ask that? Michelle pulled out her phone. Because Jenny Morrison sent me this yesterday. She showed me the screen, and my blood ran cold. It was a video, clearly taken at a party. In it, I was dancing with Rowan, his hands on my waist, my arms around his neck. We were laughing, faces close together, moving in a way that looked intimate. "Where did this come from?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jenny said it was from some party a few weeks ago. Someone posted it on Instagram and tagged you, but then deleted it, but not before people started sharing it. I remembered that night. It had been innocent fun, just dancing, just friends having a good time. But seeing it now, through the lens of a phone camera, it looked like something else entirely. "Michelle, this isn't what it looks like. Rowan and I are just friends." "I know," she said quickly. "I mean, I figured, but people are talking, Eirene. And after what happened at the restaurant yesterday..." "What do you mean, what happened at the restaurant?" "Jenny was there. She saw the whole thing with your family and that guy. She said it looked pretty intense. I felt the walls closing in around me. People need to mind their own business." "I agree, but you know how it is. Small town, big mouths." Michelle looked genuinely concerned. "I just thought you should know what's going around." The rest of the morning was torture. I could feel eyes on me everywhere I went. When I walked into the copy room, 2 women from HR stopped talking abruptly. At lunch, the usual group I sat with seemed to have found other plans. By afternoon, I was a wreck. I tried calling Sel, but she didn't answer. I tried calling Mom, but she seemed distracted and cut the conversation short. Finally, around 3 o'clock, my boss, Mr. Henderson, called me into his office. "Eirene, please have a seat." Richard Henderson was a kind man in his 60s who'd always treated me fairly. But today, his expression was serious. "I'm going to be direct," he said. "I've received some concerns about your personal conduct and how it might reflect on the company. Mr. Henderson, I can explain." "I'm not asking for explanations. Your personal life is your business. However, when it starts affecting the workplace environment, it becomes my business." I felt tears pricking at my eyes. I haven't done anything wrong. "I'm not saying you have, but perception matters in this business. Our clients trust us to maintain a professional image." "Are you firing me?" "No. But I am asking you to be mindful of how your actions might be perceived. We've worked together for 5 years, Eirene. I'd hate to see your career damaged over something like this." I left his office feeling humiliated and angry. This was all Halden's fault. If he hadn't made such a scene at the restaurant, if he'd just trusted me and let me handle things my own way, none of this would be happening. I decided to take control of the narrative. That evening, I posted on Facebook, "It's sad when people have nothing better to do than spread rumors and judge others. Marriage is about trust and communication, not control and jealousy. To those who know me, thank you for your support. To those who don't, maybe focus on your own lives instead of gossiping about mine." Marriage goals, and trust issues, and small-town drama. The post got a few supportive comments from Sel and some acquaintances, but mostly it was met with silence. Even worse, I noticed that several people had unfriended me. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, my email chimed. It was from an address I didn't recognize, with the subject line, "You should see this." My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a folder of screenshots. Text messages between Rowan and me that I didn't even remember sending. Messages that, taken together, painted a picture of something much more than friendship. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Halden's working late again. Seems like he doesn't appreciate what he has. You make me feel alive again. Wish I could stay longer, but you know how it is." There was also a receipt, an Uber ride from Rowan's apartment to my house at 2:47 a.m. on a night 3 weeks ago when I'd told Halden I was having drinks with the girls from work. And at the bottom of the email, that damning video from the party. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Someone had been watching me, collecting evidence, building a case. But who? And what did they plan to do with it? As I sat there in the dark, I realized that my carefully constructed world was starting to crumble. And the worst part was, I still couldn't admit, even to myself, that maybe, just maybe, I was the one holding the hammer. The call from Linnea's teacher came on Wednesday morning while I was still in my pajamas, nursing my third cup of coffee and scrolling through social media, looking for any new mentions of the video or the restaurant incident. "Mrs. Crowhurst, this is Miss Peterson, Linnea's teacher. I was wondering if we could schedule a time to talk about some concerns I have." My stomach clenched. "Is Linnea in trouble?" "Not in trouble, no, but she's been having some difficulty concentrating, and she seems anxious. Yesterday she asked me if people get divorced when they stop being friends." I closed my eyes. "I'll be right there." The drive to Riverside Elementary felt like the longest 15 minutes of my life. I'd been so focused on defending myself, on proving that I wasn't doing anything wrong, that I hadn't really considered how this was affecting Linnea. Miss Peterson was a gentle woman in her 40s who'd been teaching second grade for over a decade. She invited me to sit in one of the tiny plastic chairs beside Linnea's desk. "Linnea is a bright, sensitive child," she began, "but lately she's been withdrawn. She's not participating in group activities the way she usually does, and her artwork has become concerning." She showed me a drawing Linnea had made during art time. It was supposed to be a picture of her family, but instead of the usual smiling stick figures, this one showed a house divided down the middle. On one side stood a figure labeled Daddy, and on the other side stood Mommy. Between them was a small figure that looked like it was crying. "Oh God," I whispered. "Children are very perceptive," Ms. Peterson said gently. "They pick up on tension even when adults think they're hiding it well. Has there been any upheaval at home recently?" I wanted to lie, to say everything was fine, but looking at my daughter's drawing, I couldn't find the words. "Halden and I have been having some disagreements," I admitted. "I see. Well, whatever's happening, Linnea is clearly affected by it. Children need stability, Mrs. Crowhurst. They need to feel secure." Driving home, I felt a mixture of guilt and anger. Yes, Linnea was upset, but that was Halden's fault, not mine. If he hadn't made such a big deal out of nothing, if he'd just trusted me and supported me, our daughter wouldn't be caught in the middle. I decided to call Judith, Halden's mother, to see if she could talk some sense into her son. We'd always had a good relationship, and I thought she might be able to help smooth things over. "Hello, Eirene." Judith's voice was cooler than usual when she answered. "Hi, Judith. I was hoping we could talk about Halden and me. I was wondering when you'd call." We agreed to meet at the coffee shop near her house. When I arrived, Judith was already there, sitting at a corner table with her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. She looked older than I remembered, more tired. "Thank you for meeting me," I said as I sat down across from her. "Of course, your family." But something in her tone suggested that maybe I wasn't as secure in that position as I'd thought. "I'm sure Halden has told you about our situation," I began. "He's mentioned it, yes. I just want you to know that it's all been blown completely out of proportion. Rowan and I are friends, nothing more. Halden is letting his insecurities get the better of him." Judith studied me for a long moment. "Eirene, I've known my son for 36 years. He's not a jealous man. He's not controlling. If he's concerned about something, there's usually a good reason." "But there isn't a good reason. That's what I'm trying to tell you." "Isn't there?" Judith leaned forward. "Eirene, I saw that video. Jenny Morrison is in my book club." My cheeks burned. "That was just dancing, just friends having fun." "Was it? Because it didn't look like just friends to me. And the way that young man spoke to you at the restaurant, right in front of your husband and daughter. You don't understand. I understand that my son is hurting. I understand that my granddaughter is asking her teacher about divorce. And I understand that instead of taking responsibility for your part in this, you're blaming everyone else." I felt tears starting to form. "I thought you'd be on my side." "I'm on the side of my family. All of my family. Including you, if you're willing to be honest about what's really happening here." Nothing is happening, Judith sighed. Eirene, I raised 4 children. I've been married for 38 years. I know what a woman looks like when she's emotionally involved with someone who isn't her husband. The question is, are you going to do something about it before you lose everything? I left the coffee shop feeling more isolated than ever. Even Halden's mother was against me. When I got home, I tried calling my own mother for support. Mom, I need to talk to you about everything that's been happening. Oh, honey, Moira's voice was strained. I was hoping you'd call. I just need someone in my corner right now. Everyone is acting like I'm some kind of villain, but I haven't done anything wrong. Eirene, Mom paused. Sel showed me that video. My heart sank. Not you too. Sweetheart, I love you, but what I saw, that wasn't the behavior of a married woman. That was the behavior of a woman who's forgotten she's married. I can't believe my own mother is turning against me. I'm not turning against you. I'm trying to help you see what everyone else can see. You're heading down a dangerous path, and you're taking Linnea with you. That night, I noticed Halden carrying a box of papers from his home office to the bedroom. When I asked him what he was doing, he just said he was organizing some documents. Later, while taking out the trash, I found a business card at the bottom of the kitchen wastebasket. It was for a law firm downtown. Morrison, Blake & Associates, Family Law. My blood ran cold. Halden was talking to a lawyer. I confronted him as soon as he came downstairs. Are you planning to divorce me? I demanded, holding up the card. He looked at it calmly. I'm exploring my options. Your options? Halden, we can work this out. We don't need lawyers. Do we? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've already made your choice. You're just upset that there are consequences. What consequences? I haven't done anything. Haven't you? He looked at me with those same disappointed eyes I'd seen at the restaurant. Eirene, I found the Uber receipt. The words hit me like a physical blow. What Uber receipt? The one from 3 weeks ago, when you told me you were out with the girls from work, but you were actually at Rowan's apartment until almost 3 in the morning. I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come, because he was right and we both knew it. It's not what you think, I whispered. Then tell me what it is. Tell me the truth, for once. But I couldn't, because telling the truth would mean admitting that maybe everyone else was right. Maybe I had crossed a line. Maybe I was the one who was destroying our family. Instead, I did what I'd been doing all week. I went on the attack. You're the one who's destroying this marriage, Halden. You're the one who won't trust me, who won't support me. You're the one who's making our daughter suffer because you can't handle having a wife with male friends. Halden stared at me for a long moment. Then he shook his head and walked away. Where are you going? I called after him. To make some phone calls, he said without turning around. As I watched him disappear into his office and close the door, I realized that I was losing control of the situation. For the first time since this all started, I was genuinely scared. But instead of using that fear to examine my own behavior, I channeled it into anger. If Halden wanted to play hardball, fine. 2 could play that game. I had no idea that upstairs, my husband was already 3 moves ahead of me. Thursday evening, I decided to take the offensive. I'd spent the day researching divorce lawyers online, reading about custody battles and asset division. If Halden wanted to threaten me with legal action, I'd show him that I wasn't going to be intimidated. I waited until after dinner, after Linnea was in her room doing homework, before I cornered him in his home office. We need to talk, I said, closing the door behind me. Halden looked up from his computer, his expression weary. About what? About this lawyer business, about you trying to scare me with threats of divorce. I haven't threatened you with anything, Eirene. I'm simply protecting myself and my daughter. Your daughter? She's my daughter too. Is she your priority? Because it doesn't seem like it. I felt my temper flare. How dare you question my commitment to Linnea? Everything I do is for this family. Everything you do is for yourself. When was the last time you asked Linnea how she's feeling about all this? When was the last time you put her needs before your own desires? My desires? You make it sound like I'm some kind of selfish monster. All I wanted was to maintain a friendship. All I wanted was for my husband to trust me. Halden leaned back in his chair, studying me. Do you even hear yourself? You're still not taking responsibility for any of this. Responsibility for what? For having a friend? For refusing to be controlled? For lying to me? For sneaking around? For putting our marriage and our daughter's well-being at risk for some guy who doesn't even care about you? Rowan does care about me, I started, then stopped, realizing what I'd just revealed. There it is, Halden said quietly. The truth finally comes out. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? Eirene, you've been emotionally cheating on me for months, maybe longer, and instead of owning up to it, you're trying to gaslight me into thinking I'm the problem. I felt cornered, desperate. You know what, Halden? Maybe I should file first. Maybe I should be the one talking to lawyers about custody and assets. Because I'm not going to sit here and let you paint me as the villain in this story. Go ahead, he said calmly. File first. See how that works out for you. His confidence unnerved me. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've been documenting everything, Eirene. Every lie, every time you've chosen Rowan over your family, every instance of you putting Linnea in the middle of your drama. So please, by all means, let's let a judge decide who's been acting in our daughter's best interests. I stared at him, shocked by the steel in his voice. This wasn't the gentle, accommodating man I'd married. This was someone I didn't recognize. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself. There's a difference. I turned and stormed out of his office, slamming the door behind me. In our bedroom, I called Sel, pacing back and forth as I waited for her to answer. Sel, I need you to be honest with me. Do you think I should get a lawyer? There was a long pause. Eirene, maybe you should just... Stop. Maybe you should apologize to Halden and try to work things out. Apologize? For what? For whatever this is that you're doing. For putting your marriage at risk over some guy from the gym. I felt betrayed. I thought you were on my side. I am on your side. That's why I'm telling you to stop before you lose everything. After I hung up, I tried calling Mom, but she didn't answer. I tried calling a few friends from work, but got voicemails or awkward conversations that ended quickly. I was completely alone. The next morning, I was getting ready for work when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Crowhurst, this is David Morrison from Morrison, Blake & Associates. I represent your husband in a family matter. My blood turned to ice. What? I'd like to schedule a meeting with you and your attorney to discuss some urgent family matters. Are you represented by counsel? No, I don't have an attorney. I'd recommend you get one. This meeting needs to happen within the next week. What kind of meeting? What urgent family matters? I think it would be best if we discuss this in person, with proper legal representation. I'll have my secretary call you with some available times. The line went dead. I sat on the edge of my bed, shaking. This was really happening. Halden was really going through with it. I called in sick to work and spent the day frantically calling divorce attorneys. Most were booked out for weeks. The few who could see me soon wanted retainers I couldn't afford without accessing our joint accounts that I suddenly realized Halden probably had access to as well. Finally, I found a lawyer who would meet with me that afternoon. Patricia Wells had a small practice above a deli downtown, and her office smelled like pastrami and desperation. What kind of evidence does your husband have? She asked after I'd explained the situation. I don't know. He says he's been documenting things, but I don't know what that means. Text messages? Photos? Financial records? Witness statements? Maybe. I don't know. Patricia looked at me over her glasses. Mrs. Crowhurst, I need you to be completely honest with me. Have you been having an affair? No, I mean not physically. Rowan and I never... We never crossed that line. But there was an emotional component. I hesitated. We're close, but that doesn't mean... It doesn't matter what it means to you. It matters what it looks like to a judge. And if your husband has evidence of inappropriate behavior, especially if it's affected your child, you could be looking at limited custody. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. Limited custody? Supervised visitation, potentially, especially if there's evidence that your behavior has caused emotional distress to the child. I thought about Linnea's drawing, her questions about divorce, her teacher's concerns. This can't be happening, I whispered. I'm afraid it is. My advice? Try to work things out with your husband, because if this goes to court, based on what you've told me, you're not going to like the outcome. That evening, I tried one last time to talk to Halden. I found him in the living room, reading to Linnea before bedtime. Daddy, will you read the one about the princess next? Linnea asked. Of course, sweetheart, whatever you want. Watching them together, seeing how gentle and patient he was with her, I felt a stab of something that might have been regret. After Linnea went to bed, I approached him. Halden, please, let's not do this. Let's not involve lawyers and courts. We can work this out ourselves. Can we? Because I've been trying to work it out for months, Eirene. Every time I've tried to talk to you about my concerns, you've shut me down or turned it around on me. I'll do better. I'll end my friendship with Rowan. I'll do whatever you want. It's too late for that. Why? Why is it too late? He looked at me with those sad, disappointed eyes. Because you're only saying it now because you're scared of the consequences, not because you understand why it was wrong, not because you care about how it's affected me or Linnea. I do care. Do you? Then why did you text him yesterday? I froze. What? After our fight last night, you texted Rowan. You told him that Halden was being crazy and that you might need a place to stay. I had done that. In my anger and frustration, I'd reached out to Rowan for comfort. But how did Halden know? Have you been reading my phone? I didn't have to. He showed me the message. The room spun around me. What do you mean he showed you? I mean, Rowan called me this morning. He said he was tired of being in the middle of our marriage problems, and he thought I should know what was really going on. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. He called you? Apparently, he's been feeling guilty about the whole thing. He said you've been pursuing him for months, that he tried to keep things platonic, but you kept pushing for more. That's not true. He had screenshots, Eirene, of all your messages where you complained about me, where you talked about leaving me, where you made it clear that you wanted more than friendship. I sank onto the couch, the full weight of my situation finally hitting me. Rowan had betrayed me. My own family had turned against me. And now I was facing the very real possibility of losing my daughter. The lawyer wants to meet next week, I said quietly. I know. What are you going to ask for? Halden was quiet for a long moment. What I've always wanted, Eirene. A stable home for my daughter. A life without drama and lies and manipulation. And me? What happens to me? That depends on you. On whether you can finally be honest about what you've done and take responsibility for it. But as I sat there in the wreckage of my marriage, I still couldn't bring myself to admit that maybe, just maybe, I was the architect of my own destruction. The law office conference room felt like a courtroom before any gavel fell. Halden sat composed beside David Morrison, a thick manila folder and laptop between us. My attorney, Patricia Wells, whispered reminders to stay silent, but my nerves betrayed me. Morrison opened calmly. We're here to discuss dissolution and custody for Linnea. My mother and mother-in-law joined by speakerphone, their strained voices adding weight. He presented the evidence methodically. Text messages, me venting to Rowan about Halden being controlling, wishing I'd married someone who appreciated me, promising stolen moments meant everything. Bank statements and Uber receipts placed me at Rowan's late at night. A bartender's statement described us all over each other. Security footage from the party showed intimate dancing, hands on faces, lingering closeness, far longer than the viral clip. Then came Rowan's voluntary statement. I'd pursued him relentlessly, expressed unhappiness in my marriage, tried to seduce him. An audio recording of my voice played. I'm going to leave Halden. We can be together properly. Linnea's teacher report followed. Her anxiety, questions about divorce, drawings of a broken family. The school counselor recommended therapy, citing marital discord's impact. Halden spoke quietly. I'm protecting her from instability. The proposed terms: divorce on grounds of infidelity and emotional abuse, primary custody to Halden, supervised visitation for me pending counselling, and 6 months of stability. Contest it, and everything, texts, videos, recordings, would become public record. You're blackmailing me, I whispered. We're offering privacy, Morrison replied. 48 hours to sign. My mother's voice broke through. Honey, it's time to take responsibility. Think of Linnea. Judith added gently, stop fighting, start making things right. Abandoned by support, cornered by undeniable proof, I left numb. Patricia urged signing. Court will be worse. That night, alone in the empty house, I stared at the documents, my own words, actions, and lies laid bare. The next morning, I signed. 6 months later, I live in a studio apartment, work a low-profile job, and see Linnea every other weekend under supervision. Halden kept the house and primary custody. Rowan vanished to another state. In therapy, I finally admitted the truth: emotional cheating, manipulation, prioritizing selfish desires over family. Halden hadn't been controlling. He'd been protecting Linnea from the chaos I created. I'd demanded he accept my choices or face consequences. He chose consequences, legal, thorough, and child first. By the time I understood, the marriage, my daughter's trust, and my old life were gone. The consequences arrived precisely as promised, and they were final.